LA Thieves finished the season off very, very strong, finishing second in EWC. Today, we're going to go through and address who they could potentially get to replace the two members of their team that are rumored to be dropped. So, the rumors are Joe Thieves and Ghosty are staying in the squad, which I think is definitely, you know, acceptable. They were both really good players for the year, especially Ghosty. You give that guy the keys, he was unbelievable. Then you have Nasty and Kremp that are allegedly being dropped. I think rumors are that, you know, their bios changed from Twitter and stuff like that. You know, people on Twitter, these guys are like detectives. I'm not in that. I'm just looking on Twitter, see what's going on, talk about it. So I think the first thing to address is the roster. What do I think of it? So there was rumors that they could potentially stay together after EWC as well. You know, keep them together. They had a good end to the season. Me personally, I feel like this offseason, when there's so many big players moving about, I think there's a missed opportunity. I do think the team was good, but you can definitely pack a punch. There's no one telling me that there's no way you can upgrade this team, right? So you look at the team and who do we keep? I am very happy with the decision to keep Ghosty. I think that's, you know, you can't really argue with that. The guy was unbelievable. Out of the top four, besides the top four, he was by far the best player in the game. And even including top four, Ghosty was up there. Like, this guy was crazy good. Really good. Then you have the SMGs. I'm very happy to keep Joe. I think out of the two, Kremp and Joe, there was kind of, even throughout with Nasty as well, there was kind of inconsistencies throughout the year. They all kind of showed hope here and there. But I think overall, when you look at the players out of the three, I personally would keep Joe as well. I feel like, especially at EWC, he really showed his potential. And you're just seeing him really come into his kind of own as a CDL player. As the years are going by, he's getting more experience. This guy's incredibly young, by the way. I think he's like 19 or something. So he's got plenty of time. Very young, very good player as well. So I am more than happy to see Joe Thieves and a CDL roster. I think will be unbelievable. So now we've got a nice little block to go with. We got Ghosty and Joe. So let's talk about who we can get in, okay? Some options. So the first popular rumor that we've seen is Sib and Envoy. Now, honestly, I could end the video right here because I think that is an unbelievable roster. Unbelievable. I think instantly that goes into the top four, and Toronto potentially falls out depending on what happens there. It's kind of uncertain. There's a chance that Scrap goes to C9, which I think is quite likely. If that's the case, then, you know, Toronto are going to be... What happened to Toronto? Because now Envoy's gone, Insight's gone, Scrap's gone. It's basically a new project, which we have no idea what's going to happen. So it could even be a rebuilding phase. We have no idea. So right now, if that roster does form of, you know, Joe and Envoy as the SMGs, and then you've got Sib and Ghosty as your ARs, that is a unbelievable roster. And I do believe that straight away goes into the top four and replaces Ultra, because we don't know what's happening with them. But is that the best roster they can make? Let's see. Who else is out there? So the few things I want to go through, I think it does come down to combination. So when we're looking at these things now, it's like, and this is where it gets really kind of confusing because of like contracts and everything. So first thing is we look at the game, okay? So we look at the game of Black Ops 6. Now, I believe that meta will be a 3 SMG meta for at least a few maps. I think this game we're going to see at least a 3 SMG meta, kind of like how last year there were certain maps with 3 AR meta. Like you look at Invasion Control, right? That was like a 3 AR meta, sometimes even 4. You look at like sub base, the majority of the maps last year were 3 AR, 3 MTWs, right? So we look at this year, based on the small to medium maps, we now have 2 SMGs, I would say, as a minimum, and then some maps might even have 3. So I'm looking at them as like, we definitely need a flex that is comfortable in both weapons. Now, do we have Ghosty on that? Or do we have Ghosty the main AR? So that's the first question. I think that comes down to, 1, who they get, and 2, his decision, because he was that guy last year. I think he's kind of earned the right to make that decision. Now, I don't think it's a factor of, oh, can he play that role? He can absolutely play that role if he wanted to. It's more, does he want to? Or like, for example, let's say he doesn't want to go near a sub, right? Then they will get in a flex that can do that. But let's say he wants to do that, then they will get in an AR that's going to stay as a main AR. You see where I'm coming from? So I think it does depend on that. But let's just go away from the Sib Envoy route, because I think that's a great route and I'm happy with that. So let's go through some other creative options. Me personally, I'm like, all right, if I'm Ghosty, let's say I'm going to the flex role, right? Because the flex is the do it all. He does all this. Great player. Who do we get in then? I think someone to potentially get in then is Insight. So now we've got somebody that's a bit slower, who's going to play that main AR role, because there's not going to be 4 SMGs on the map, right? We're going to have 1 AR. So we have Insight as that designated main AR. We've got someone that's our main kind of base anchor, that main AR role. We actually got a bit of leadership. This guy's a bit of a, not veteran, but he's won in the past. He's got some leadership. He brings those comms. Okay, it's a very young team we're going with in LA Thieves now. So I think Insight's also a good player to have. Now, this is where people get really kind of... I would say unfair, is they'll look at that and say, oh, why would you get Insight over Sib? I don't look at it as a 1-for-1. I look at it as a team change. So when you're bringing Insight in, yes, you're not having the slaying capability of Sib, but you're bringing other assets in, right? You're bringing an S&D player who's very icy. You're bringing one of the best S&D players in the league. You're bringing a slower AR player. But what does that do? That allows for a faster SMG player to be inserted in, right? So it's like a balance. So we got Ghosty, we got Insight, and we got Joe. Now we're looking at the SMGs and we're like, right, who can we get here? And I do believe in this year, we're going to need someone with pace. So this is where I think the cards are kind of open. And I think Insight gives you that freedom to take some risks here. So I'm looking at the SMGs available. It's like, honestly, if Hook was playing a bit better this year, was a bit more consistent, I would probably say Hook is a good fit. But I just believe he wasn't that consistent this year. And like, I just don't think he's going to get a spot there, to be honest with you. Envoy is still an option, for sure, but I think if you're going with Envoy, then you do want to get Sib in that team, because Envoy is one of those that kind of takes those routes. It's not like, you know, he's not going to be like your Kleenex, like your hyper aggressive submachine gun. So this is what I mean by combination. So I think if you go with Sib, you get your Envoy, because then your slaying is taken care of by Sib, you got your routes by Envoy, right? But if you're going with Insight, then I do believe you need another slaying heavy SMG. So out of the options, I don't really know what comes to mind. I'm just trying to think of some options, and it's like, there's a few good ones. You got your Vivids, your Neros. I think they're always good ones to kind of go back to, simply because those are those players that they're kind of underrated in terms of they bash their head. Those are those aggressive, fast SMGs that they kind of just get picked apart when like rosters get taken away simply because of the team. But it's like someone like Vivid, bro, I don't know how he's not in the league. Then this is where I think a shout could come in. Okay, I think Mac is returning. From what I've seen, I think Mac is returning to Black Ops 6. If Insight was to go to this team, I believe Mac could come through. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The Mac we saw in Vanguard was good. He was good. But he was overshadowed by Pred. He wasn't his best. And I do believe the Mac we saw in like MW19 and like just overall the Mac we saw starting to come through when he was playing his best Call of Duty is the Mac we could potentially see with this roster. So for me, I'm looking at Thieves. I'm saying, right, what is the roster we want to go with? Do we want to go with Sib and Envoy? For me, that's the #1 priority. If you can get that done, you go for that. I think that's a great roster. But I want to kind of take a bit of a deeper route and say, right, what if we can't get that done? What if, you know, Sib goes Toronto or whatever happens? We don't know. But what's our backup options? For me, the backup is Insight and Mac. You could go with someone like Nero as well, like I mentioned, someone like Vivid. But I really believe Mac is like one of those. What I'm looking for this Rostermania is those underrated players that are like people aren't talking about, people aren't thinking about. Someone like Illy, Mac, these people that they're coming back on the scene, there's names floating about, but no one's really like, addressing them. And for me, if you can get Insight and Mac in, automatically that's a very solid team. Now, is it as good as the other team? Definitely not. I do look at those teams on paper and I say the Sib team I think is a lot better, but like I said, we're not always going to be able to get those players. So let's assume we can't get Sib and Envoy, right? Like I said, that should be a priority. Then I would go for Insight and Mac, and I still think that's a very good team. Let me know down below, what do you guys think of those teams? Like I said, team 1 I think is clear, but what do you think of team 2? Do you guys like the team of Ghosty, Insight, Joe, and Mac? Do you think it's a good team? Do you think it's got potential? What do you guys think? Let me know down below. What would you guys do? Be realistic. Don't say, oh, well, let's buy scrap out. Like, be realistic. Try to find a team that you think actually works, and let me know down below. Catch you guys for another one tomorrow. Peace.